it's good to be aware of. You need to know the scope and the content of the prior art to make an obviousness determination. You need to identify the differences between what you've invented and what's in the prior art, and have an idea of what the level of the ordinary skill is. Those are the three factual considerations that go into it. Secondary considerations, if you can also present evidence that, hey, this invention may seem obvious, but we have these other considerations that show that it really wasn't. These secondary considerations now, as a practical matter, are pretty much dead letter. They don't work anymore for the most part. This is the more recent 2007 case of KSR. One of the important holdings in that case is speaking about the need for caution in granting a patent based on a combination of elements found in the prior art. So such a combination of familiar elements, according to known methods, is likely to be obvious when it does no more than yield predictable results. So that's a formula to be aware of if you're inventing. Is this combination new? Is it combined just according to known methods? And are the results predictable? And this just restates the test. The claim won't be considered patentable if it encompasses anything that can be obtained by modifying the closest prior art using known technology in accordance with its known uses to achieve a predictable result. Now, when you're faced with a office action in the Patent and Trademark Office, typically you apply for a patent, you'll get a response back from the Patent Office rejecting all the claims. And oftentimes the rejections will include rejections on the basis of obviousness. And this is what it'll look like. The examiner will present prior art and say all elements of the claim are disclosed in the prior art. Even though the combination is new, pieces of it are disclosed here and there. And that he'll give some motivation. The examiner will state some motivation existed to change or modify the prior art elements to obtain something that's within the scope of the claim. So how do you win against that? Well, there's two basic ways. One, you show that, hey, there really was no motivation to combine these things for different reasons. The number two really should be number one there. It's sort of an absolute novelty test. If you can show that the references just simply don't disclose what's being claimed, you can overcome. These are examples of motivation arguments for overcoming on the motivation. These are just some arguments that have been successful in the past. I won't go into those in detail. These are some other points to be aware of if you're developing a patent application. Even though a lot of this falls on the shoulders of the patent attorney, as the inventor, it's important that you be aware of the intellectual process involved. And key to that is knowing the closest prior art prior to drafting the application. Many of the people in this room work in an academic or professional environment where they're on the cutting edge. Likely you already know the closest prior art. If you're dealing in an area where you're not so familiar, you'll need to do some research and find out what's closest. And then identify the differences and have a theory of how you're going to claim those differences so that you define something that's not going to be considered obvious, either because it has an element that just isn't present in the prior art, or it achieves a result that just isn't predictable, or it's just not something that anyone would have been motivated to do. So some don'ts. These are more patent attorney tips, but don't base your case for patentability on minor quibbles. Really have a substantive argument that's going to be convincing on the point of obviousness. There's a few tricks of the trade you can use to improve your odds. One of them is accelerated examination. This is a pie chart from the PTO website showing that 75% of accelerated examination petitions that were decided on the merits have been granted, so that your odds go from, well, let's say roughly 44% to 75% if you file a petition for accelerated examination. Well, the downsides are there's a much greater initial cost, and standard one, if you're over 65 or close to 65, you can get accelerated examination because of your age. This will also improve your odds somewhat. This graphic has nothing to do with the law, but it gave me a chuckle. So I would say if you're over 65 or you have inventors in your group that are over 65 or close to it, all they need to do is contribute something inventive to the application as a whole, and you'll be eligible, that application will be eligible for this procedure. I highly recommend it. It's not going to have time to go all through these. I think that there are some realities that you need to be aware of as an inventor, that this is a speculative activity. It's sort of a game of numbers. It does reward organizations that have deep confidence and invest in lots of different patents to spread out their risks. They can also defend themselves with more patents. Just because you've got a patent doesn't mean you can freely practice it. If the right to exclude it doesn't guarantee you the freedom to practice it. I think as a result of these forces and others, we'll see, these are some trends that we'll see in the innovation field. We'll see increasing use of patent pooling, where organizations that are not either practicing businesses or non-practicing businesses will be acquiring patent pools and licensing those out or seeking to enforce them individually. There'll be continuing and increasing dominance by large patenting organizations. We're not going to see a lot of IPOs. We're going to see a decreased risk tolerance for venture capitalists, making it a more difficult environment for startups. Licensing of intellectual property is going to increase in relative importance, and damage awards, I think, will be lower in certain cases. I don't know how many people here are independent inventors, but I think just a few tips here. Document all inventive activity that goes into an invention to establish an early date. File a U.S. provisional application as soon as it's well developed enough to be patenting. Be aware that starts a one-year clock. At that time, you can search and review the prior art, assess your patentable claim scope, assess the business value of that patentable claim scope, and decide, is this something you really want to move forward to? After a year, you'll need to support a regular patent application, either U.S. or international, not later than the first public use or first offer for sale. And periodically during the process, reassess where you are with your business case. Remember, developing an innovation is mostly business activity and only partly legally a patent acquiring activity. For the sponsored inventor, I think I'll let the other speakers address this more. It's more in their area, but I think if you work for the university and have the opportunity to patent things in cooperation with the university, you're in a very favorable position in this environment. For one thing, it allows you to focus on inventing valuable technology and avoiding the lawyers as much as possible. So that's all I have. Yeah, we'll take questions at the end, and I believe Rafi is next.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jake. Our next presenter has the industry patent perspective. Dr. Rajiv Yadav is the Senior Intellectual Property Counsel at Edwards Life Sciences. He is responsible for all intellectual property matters related to Edwards' core surgical heart valve business, including procuring, protecting, and enforcing the company's patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Prior to Edwards, he participated as the lead associate in several patent and trademark infringement lawsuits. He graduated from Southwestern University School of Law and has a Ph.D. in chemical engineering from UC Santa Barbara. Please help me welcome Dr. Yadav.